Hey guys, this is Steve for CollectorMania, and we have a special guest with us for the start of our deck tech for Jori En. This is Emmy, the shop dog. She's being camera shy right now, as you can tell. But yeah, we'll continue on with our deck tech here. We just thought we'd show you this cute little gal. Hey guys, this is Steve for CollectorMania. We're here doing another deck in our 32 series. We've moved on to Izzet, so this is my favorite Izzet commander strategy so far. I've had quite a few different decks. I started with Izzet way back in the day, and this is kind of where I've landed finally an agreeable pair here. Essentially, the deck is a secret commander deck. I know that term has been thrown around a lot lately, where you have a commander inside the deck that is your main focus, but you use actually another commander up front. With this, I've chosen Jori En. She's just an amazing card advantage engine. She also works and can, generate enough card advantage to win the game eventually, but the main focus of the deck is actually Arjun, the Shifting Flame. He's a little bit more interesting, but he also lends himself to getting, thrown off the table really quickly. People realize what he does. I mean, he's a mind moil on a creature, so usually the strategy is built around that. So anyway, this is a little bit different. Like I said, I really like this setup, and I've been having a lot of fun with it. With that, we'll go kind of into our normal breakdown. We'll go into mana, fix, and ramp here. It's more, it's got the traditional rocks in there like Soul Ring, and we've got Burnished Heart, of course, stuff like that. But things like Goblin Electromancer, I really need to grab a Baral for this deck. I don't know why I haven't already, but maybe I'll do that after this episode here. But yeah, we've got Goblin Electromancer. He's one of the big ones. Just making your instants and sorceries cost one less. That way you can kind of chain into your mind moiling, essentially, because you want to get Arjun out and you want to just like start flipping through cards and just find your extra turn effect or your untap effect. So stuff like that's really important. Thought Vessel is another really cool one. The reason it's in here mainly is because it helps you with that unlimited hand size. You can't always rely on finding your Reliquary Tower, so you really need kind of a backup, and I'm really happy they actually ended up printing this card, and especially since they put it in a lot of Commander product. It's made it super accessible. Hedron Archive, of course, is another one of my favorites that we've talked about before, but I just have to continually bring it up. This card in this deck is actually really, really important because being able to sacrifice and draw those cards sometimes could make or break you winning the game. I mean, it's that close. I wouldn't necessarily call it a combo deck, but it's very, well, I guess it is kind of a combo deck, but it helps you synergize a lot. With that, moving on to card advantage here, we've got a huge section here. There's a lot of cards in here, like Merfolk Looter comes up, Thassa, God of the Sea, just being able to scry, Mold Drifter is another really big one, but more of the focus is like Nivix Guildmage. This guy is actually really, really cool. I'm going to pull it up really quick. So you can pay 3 and draw a card, then discard a card, so you can kind of rummage, or actually that's just straight up loot. And then you've got his second ability, copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. So this can be, extra turn effects, untap effects, like I don't even know what's a really good one. There's a ton of them, like Spell Twine even is a really cool card, stuff like that. Just really cool card. Dualcaster Mage is after that. This guy's crazy too. Once again, copying extra turn effects. That's kind of the card advantage that not a lot of people really look at, because you're essentially generating a card that you don't necessarily have. So really cool effect. Then we've got cards like Mercurial Chemister, really big in the deck. Being able to tap him, pay for his ability, draw 2 cards, or even just sling a card at somebody or some creature to get rid of it can also really work. Arcanus is another really big one. Of course, this guy's been in lists since he was printed, probably. Also a really good commander if you've never looked at him before. Just 6 costs, tap him, draw 3 cards. There are a ton of ways to untap him in this deck, so you can just continually draw cards. Another card that I really need to pick up now that I think about it is probably Paradox Engine. I need to do some updates on this one, obviously. Niv-Mizzet Draco Genius. This is an include just because he's one of my favorite cards of all time. He was one of my first commander decks ever, and he's just a really cool card. I pulled a foil like way back in the day, so, well, not really way back in the day, but a few years ago. Another really cool card, Alhemmer's Archive. This card in this deck is ridiculous. especially with Jori En's ability. So you can just draw cards, draw cards, draw cards. You do have to be kind of careful with it though, because it does make you draw the cards, so you can mill yourself out potentially. So be careful there. A big thing with Jori En, kind of since she is the upfront commander, is like cantrips, like Preordain and CRM Visions. They're really important. Brainstorm's another one that comes to mind. Anything that is cheap, that way you can meet that criteria of playing 2 spells and then getting the extra draw trigger. Plus, cantrips obviously will draw you another card on top of that, so you're just generating card advantage throughout that. Reoccurring Insight's a really big one. Eric actually showed me this years ago when I was building one of my first control decks, and it's a ridiculous card, being able to draw, some people have 7 cards in their hand, then you just draw 7 cards, then you just draw 7 cards, especially if you have like that Thought Vessel or Reliquary Tower. I mean, you're set. You've got basically what you need, especially when you start the Mind Moil with Arjun. Shifting through that many cards can actually be really, really, really effective on finding your win conditions. And with that, we've kind of got this, or we've got this section, triggered abilities and utility. These are where a lot of the win conditions actually are. Like Gutter Snipe is a huge one. If you can just chain together a whole bunch of spells, I mean, you can just finish everybody off pretty quick with that. Talrun the Sky Summoner, he's another really big one, generating a ton of tokens, taking over the skies. I mean, going back a little bit, Young Pyromancer pretty much does the same thing on the ground, a bunch of little elementals. Docent of Perfection is another one that's similar to both of them, really, because eventually you do get to turn them into 3/2 flying monsters, once you flip the Docent over to his other side. And then we've got things like Psychosis Crawler. This card will just win you the game if you keep Arjun on the board. All you have to do is cast a couple spells and everybody's finished off. And I kind of like that approach to this kind of deck, because you're not trying to win through combat damage at all. You're just trying to trigger your spells and abilities, which is way different from what a lot of decks are trying to do. Turnabout, a really good spell to get into. That way, once again, as I was talking about earlier, you want to be able to untap your mana rocks and generate more mana, and then just keep going, keep the wheel going essentially. Walk the Aeons. There's your extra turn spell. I only have this one in here just because my play group doesn't really care for extra turns too much. It's a thing, you got to kind of be sensitive to your other players that you like playing with. So every once in a while I'll try and win that way, but it's not really my main focus. Usually I try and get the Psychosis Crawler and win that way, or even the Gutter Snipe. But still a lot of fun. Metallurgic Summonings is kind of the enchantment version of Talrun or Young Pyromancer, either way you want to look at it. The benefit here is that it makes a token equal to the size of the converted mana cost of the spell that you cast. So it can make some pretty crazy tokens, especially if you can like chain a couple spells together and make like just an army of weirdly powered things. Anyway, moving on from that, we've got Recursion, of course. That's pretty important in this deck. There's quite a few effects. Archaeomancer is probably one of my favorites. It's a card that, I think is, underplayed in a lot of ways. It's just a 2/2 wizard that comes in and grabs you an instant or sorcery from your graveyard so you can play it again. Really cool. It's kind of like the old school Snapcaster, if you want to look at it that way. A little less flashy, of course. And then we've got Mizzix Mastery is a really big one. This came out in the product, what was that, 2014? 15? Yeah, anyway, one of those Commander products. It is a heck of a spell. I mean, it is insane. Just being able to cast all your instant and sorcery cards from your graveyard without paying their cost is bonkers. So you obviously want to wait for this card for late game, but I mean, as soon as you can actually play it, you're probably going to win. So then we've got Mystic Retrieval, another one of those kind of like grab an instant or sorcery from your graveyard, bring it back. Cool thing with this one, it does have flashback, so you can use it again. Past in Flames is kind of similar to that. It's, each instant or sorcery in your graveyard has flashback, so it's a little bit different, but it's actually pretty cool. Let's see, Spell Twine is kind of like that, except for it's for your opponent's spells, because you get to cast one of yours and one of theirs. So depending on what your opponents are playing, it could be pretty big. I've had it be a dud though sometimes, where you're just playing against 3 creature decks, and you're just like, well, what do I want to cast out of these guys' libraries or graveyards? I mean. And then we've got Tutor, of course. Sometimes you want to be able to find stuff. We've talked about Mystical Tutor before and Fabricate, so I kind of focused on Polaria West. It's a really interesting effect. Like, not a lot of people have really seen these cards before, which is kind of funny to me. It's transmute, so essentially you're going to end up looking for something that's 2 cost or 0 cost in this case. So a lot of times I just go and find like random artifacts or lands usually. Like Academy Ruins usually comes up with this card. That's usually the first thing that I go grab with this, because there are, Psychosis Crawler will get itself killed right away. So being able to just, transmute with this card, go get your Academy Ruins or your Reliquary Tower, and then just have it in your hand to be able to play it is essential. There's a lot of higher up transmute cards that I could definitely include. I think there's a counterspell one that costs 3, but you transmute it for 2 or something like that. Or no, it costs 2, and then you transmute it for 3, and then you can go grab like Cyclonic Rift or any of those kind of big effects. So once again, something to throw in here. Okay, so moving on from Tutor, we've got Removal and Response. Obviously, this is a control deck. There's a lot of counterspells, stuff like that, just generic like Negate, Dissolve, stuff like that. But also with that, there's things like Reality Shift and Counterflux. Like Reality Shift being blue exile, that doesn't happen very often. Mostly it's either bounce back to hand or rapid hybridization as another example. That's just straight up destroy and give somebody a 3/3 token. So being able to just straight up exile something in blue, that's pretty good. Like that Avacyn's not really going to stand a chance against that. So I mean, that's really cool. Downside, of course, is that they get to morph whatever the top card of the library is into play. It could be a creature, but most of the time it actually ends up being something they can't even morph out of, like a land or instant or sorcery. So it's just a 2/2. So I can do the trade-off there. Counterflux, great counterspell, of course. You can counter pretty much anything. It's uncounterable. Plus you can overload it and counter the entire stack if you need to. There have been instances where I've actually had to do that, so this spell definitely works really well for that. Then we've got a great defense spell in Aetherize. It's kind of a miniature Cyclonic Rift. I know we've talked about it before. Awesome card, though. In the same vein, we've got Cryptic Command, which can actually stop your opponents from attacking you with some big, huge army. But, I mean, it's modal, so it does a ton of things. Countering spells, drawing you cards. Probably one of the best cycles of modal spells, to be honest. It's ridiculous. Then we've got Summary Dismissal. This card is really good for those situations where like the spell can't be countered, like Supreme Verdict or the new Emrakul, where it's countering the ability, not only the spell kind of thing. So yeah, really cool card. On from that, I mean, we've really just got your normal generic dual land stuff like that, and with all of our videos, of course, like this, you can check out the deck list at the bottom. We've got a tapped out link there, so you can kind of check out and see exactly what everything is. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Do the like, favorite, subscribe thing as always, and we'll see you guys next time for, I believe we're moving on to Simic next. So anyway, we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.